Welcome to this very special symposium, The Many Lives of Medieval Manuscripts. We have all so been looking forward to this event, and we are grateful for your enthusiasm to attend and to all our speakers for volunteering their time. My name is Laura Shanahan. I am Head of Research Collections in the library, and I am privileged to work with the amazing team of manuscripts, map, and rare book specialists who curate the collections and the team who provide access to these collections every day. My role just now is just to do a brief bit of housekeeping before we open the session. So there are no fire alarms planned or any other emergency incidents. If it does sound, please exit here or behind you. You can follow the fire exit signs. And if you do need any assistance, please just look for one of us wearing lanyards as Trinity staff. We will help you in any way we can. The toilets are here behind me. There's two in this corridor and there's one back at the entrance foyer there as well. We'll be taking a short break at 4:20 this afternoon for teas and coffees. And we obviously have water in the foyer as well. But again, if you need anything, please do just give us a shout. The sessions are being recorded by the wonderful Barry over here today. And tomorrow we will be doing some podcast recording as well. We do expect a lot of photography, so please just be aware of that as well. So that being done, and without further ado, I'd like to hand you over to our librarian and college archivist, Helen Shenton, to officially welcome you, followed by Dame Louise Richardson, President of Carnegie Corporation of New York, our project sponsor, to open the symposium. Helen.
Thank you so much, Laura, and a very, very, very warm welcome to absolutely everyone to this symposium. The Medieval Manuscripts Project is the first of the projects under our overarching umbrella of the Virtual Trinity Library. And the vision and ambition of the Virtual Trinity Library, at its simplest when we started it, was to make all of our amazing treasures, our embarrassment of riches, to make them available for anyone in the world with an internet connection and an energy source. That was the high-level vision. And as part of that, we would then be creating a digital entity which we saw would join up with all those other major digital libraries, digital aggregators like Europeana, all those virtual libraries, Swiss e-codices in the case of manuscripts. And we would create this enormous digital entity for researchers to research and interrogate in a way, we said 7 years ago, that we couldn't even imagine. So we knew about text data mining and text mining, but in the future that this would be this entity, a digital entity for researchers in a way that we could not imagine. Now, the life cycle of each of the projects, we've got sort of 9 different categories, was that for each of these collections, for example, the medieval manuscripts, we'll do fundamental work, fundamental conservation, fundamental cataloguing and curation. And the material would be digitized. We had a vision to have advanced technology in that section as well. And then it's the outputs, it's the research that it catalyzes, it's the embedding in teaching, which we already have done in the master's degree here. And that dissemination to everyone, to school children, to scholars. And it is enormously gratifying and humbling that our lofty ambitions of 7 odd years ago are being realized. And so far, for this medieval manuscript project, which you'll hear about in the first session, we've created 5 new positions. I'm incredibly proud of that for researchers and for curators and conservators. We've created 15,000 digital images. We've digitized 60 of our manuscripts. We've got over 600 medieval manuscripts. So 10% are now available online. We've conserved fundamental conservation treatment, 23 manuscripts. The outputs have been scholarly articles, research, blogs, postgraduate, undergraduate teaching. We have been part of Researchers' Night. We're having collaborations with the Bodleian and with University in Toronto and so on. And that vision about the advanced technology that I couldn't predict at the time, it's coming true. So even yesterday in the conversation, I love the conversation, you know, that publication, there's 3 different versions, and the strapline is scholarly rigor, journalistic flair. And it really makes research really on everything really, really digestible. But in yesterday, Mark Faulkner, who is addressing us tomorrow, he wrote a piece about the automated transcription and handwritten text recognition using AR. AI. I'm in the wrong conference. About AI. So that is already, that vision about having this huge digital entity is for research. New research is coming to pass. So we're doing fundamental stewardship of our collections by doing cataloguing and conservation and so on. And then we're advancing technology. And none of this would be possible without the fantastic support of our inaugural funders who had faith and belief in our vision. And the the Carnegie Corporation of New York was the first to fund any of the virtual Trinity Library. Under the presidency of Vartan Gregorian, one-time president of the New York Public Library and an inspirational supporter of libraries. And so I'm delighted today that we're joined today by the new-ish president of the Carnegie Corporation of New York, Dame Louise Richardson, of this parish, hailing from Waterford, illustrious alum of Trinity, who was most recently Vice-Chancellor of Oxford University. She's an expert in international security and terrorism. She was at the helm of the Radcliffe College, the all-women college, and took it as to become part of Harvard University. And she was Vice-Chancellor of St. Andrews before moving to Oxford, where she was credited with moving fast and flexibly that led to the development of the AstraZeneca COVID vaccine, which saved so many lives. So I wish you all an absolutely amazing symposium, and please welcome Louise Richardson.
Thank you very much, Helen. It's an absolute pleasure to be back here in Trinity and reliving my days, many days in Front Square. I lived in rooms in college for 2 years. It was possible those days. So I've been having a great time retracing my steps. I studied medieval history and have many fond memories of lectures by Ian Robinson and James Lydon. So the work that you're doing is very dear to my heart. So it's such a pleasure to come back as an alum and as the current president of Carnegie to watch the progress on this amazing project. I was here about a year ago, last November, and saw some of the work that was being done, the painstaking work to conserve and digitize this fabulous collection. When I was a student, I worked as a shelver in the library from 8 to 10 every morning, 6 mornings a week. The library only opened at 10 in those days. So again, I got to know many of the librarians and to be so inspired by their dedication and commitment to making the contents of these libraries available. Andrew Carnegie, as you probably know, was utterly committed to libraries. He built 2,500 of them all around the world, 66 in Ireland, 63 of which are still functioning, which is pretty amazing. And we've stopped building libraries, but I tend to think of digitization as the 21st century equivalent of the Free Public Library, because just as Helen has described, it is making accessible to anyone, anywhere with an internet connection, the extraordinary contents of these extraordinary holdings, these amazing manuscripts that I look forward to learning more about as the afternoon progresses. So just to say, Carnegie is absolutely delighted by our connection to this. I'm personally deeply delighted by our connection to this project, and certainly pleased to see how many young scholars are involved in this initiative to ensure that future generations will continue to learn more about and gain access to these extraordinary manuscripts. So I wish you well and wish you a very enjoyable and productive couple of days. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen and Louise. Your vision has really shown what can be done when you have high-level support for projects like this. Please do stay for as long as you can this afternoon and call back in and out tomorrow as it suits. I'm pleased now to be able to open the first session where we'll hear from the phenomenal project team behind the Manuscripts for Medieval Studies project. We have 3 talks of around 15 to 20 minutes each, followed by time for a few questions. We do have a packed programme this afternoon though, and I will be keeping an eye on time, so do not be offended when I wave a flag at you that says, hurry up. So our first speakers this afternoon are Estelle Gittins and Dr. Claire McNulty. Estelle Gittins is the curatorial lead in the library for the Manuscripts for Medieval Studies project, and she has led this all the way through from the depths of COVID. Estelle has been working in Trinity's library for over a decade and plays a particularly active role in outreach and engagement with our collections. Estelle is also the convener of the Sharing the Book strand in Trinity's new research centre for the book, and she sits on the Library Knowledge Network of the Beyond 2022 project. Estelle holds a degree in art history and is a qualified archivist. Dr. Claire McNulty is the postdoctoral research fellow in the Manuscripts for Medieval Studies project. She joined Trinity in May 2023 and has been focused over the last 6 months on delivering this symposium. Claire is also conducting research into books of errors in the library's collection and has shared some fascinating insights already. Claire has a particular interest in gender, religion, and culture in the late medieval period, and her book, Edinburgh's Unruly Women, published by Routledge, is forthcoming. Claire holds a BA and MPhil from Trinity and was awarded her PhD by Queen's University Belfast. So Estelle and Claire would like to introduce you to the project this afternoon and provide an overview of the manuscripts digitised in this paper. Estelle first.
Well, hello everyone, and thank you so much for coming. I think I'm about to give the 4th warm welcome of the day, I think. My name's Estelle Gittins. You've probably figured that out by now. I'm very proud to be the curatorial lead of this project. This project, as Helen said, is to catalogue, conserve, digitise, research, and share a selection of the library's most significant medieval manuscripts. The aim of this symposium over today and tomorrow is to celebrate the manuscripts that have been made available online as part of this, but it's also to celebrate the achievements of the team who made it possible, and especially to celebrate our researchers, some of whom are delivering talks as part of the programme today and tomorrow, and hopefully sparking curiosity and engagement with future researchers. So if you take anything away from what I'm about to say today, it's that we want to hear from you. If you've got any ideas, please come and share them. So I don't need to tell the crowd assembled here that digitised versions of manuscripts are a game changer for research in medieval studies. Being able to access a unique medieval object from your computer rather than having to travel to see it has revolutionised research. So study that could take a few weeks to conduct can be done in an afternoon and from thousands of miles away from the manuscript's physical location. Caring for the manuscripts and making more available to more users is always our aim here in the library. Some of the high-profile manuscripts that have already been digitised include the Book of Kells here, the Book of Durrow, and other treasures of early medieval Ireland. But there are many more still to do, and there are around 600 medieval manuscripts in the collection here in Trinity. So our project, as Helen said, is a flagship one for the virtual Trinity Library programme. We're called Manuscripts for Medieval Studies because the selection of manuscripts being worked upon are those that are used for teaching within Trinity, especially on the MPhil in Medieval Studies. So as well as doing the work to get the digitised versions online, another aim of the project, as Helen said, is to connect with communities and to spark research. And what's particularly important about this project is that the material included is in high demand already and in active use by both students here at Trinity and researchers abroad. And excitingly, new research networks are beginning to emerge already. The manuscripts selected range in date from the 5th to the 16th centuries, and they represent virtually every area of medieval thought and activity across Western Europe and further afield. They contain languages from Irish, Greek, Latin, Middle and Old English, French, Dutch, and Italian. And they range in format from really lavish manuscripts to entertain royal families through to much smaller, more intimate manuscripts for the youngest members of monastic communities. These manuscripts' significance lies not only in their beautiful illumination or the fact that they're unique texts, but also in the fact that they survived the Reformation, the dissolution of the monasteries, not to mention the destruction wrought by accident, fire, flood, and warfare over several centuries of history. Some surviving manuscripts are precious in that they preserve the texts of manuscripts long lost to destruction, but all are unique and irreplaceable. Some of the most highly decorated and significant manuscripts in the library, the 12th century West Dereham Bible, pictured first here, the Winchcombe Bible and Psalter, number 2, and the Matthew Paris Life of St. Alban. Oh, sorry, back there. Although this appears to be a guest appearance by offer here. They've all been photographed in their entirety in colour for the very first time. It's a special digital resource, important for the study of the history of the book and the whole medieval period more broadly. Analysis of digital versions always opens up new perspectives, comparisons, lines of inquiry, and obviously the brilliant zoom function reveals layers of work not visible to the naked eye. The face of Naomi here, manuscript 35, it's actually only 3 millimeters across. So I've been making good use of the zoom function, zooming in and out. She's just beautiful. So it also allows scholars of any age to engage, and we've found that we have had more than enough material to develop a Guess the Medieval Animal game for children and a Match the Script to the Historical Period game for students. And some of these prove very popular at the various events we've had, especially if we offer prizes, which sometimes we're able to do. The project is very generously funded by the Carnegie Corporation of New York and was especially championed, as Helen said, by their late president, Vartan Gregorian. We are so grateful to the current president, Dame Louise, for her continued support. She referenced herself, and I hope she won't mind me mentioning again, that it meant an awful lot when you visited the first time. It was very much behind the scenes and involved a table spread full of manuscripts, and that's proper interest, and we are very, very grateful. As we all know, and as Louise said, we at Carnegie have a long and distinguished history in supporting libraries, and we're very, very proud to continue this tradition into the future. So, getting a manuscript online doesn't happen overnight. The work involved in sharing such manuscripts includes many different skills and expertise. The processes involved intersect science, IT, and the humanities. So the project team here includes curators, archivists, conservators, photographers, system services colleagues, digital programmers, metadata catalogers, academic researchers, teachers, and now musicians. We've been able to secure a wonderful project team to focus on this work. You'll hear later from our photographer, Caroline Harding, and our conservator, Angelica Anchisi. And we have to shout out to Angelica's predecessor, Laura O'Farrell, who's here as well today, and our archivist and project manager, Alison Ray. They were both with us for the first phase of the project. We've also been fortunate to welcome postdoctoral researcher, Dr. Claire McNulty, who you will hear from next. And we have her to thank for most of the symposium organisation. We're supported by Laura, our head of research collections, who's been absolutely crucial to all of this, and by a steering group of library colleagues and our academic expert, Dr. Mark Faulkner, who runs the Trinity MPhil in Medieval Studies, and Dr. Anne Buckley, who's worked on the music manuscripts for very many years. We're also standing on the shoulder of giants of the past who catalogued the manuscripts, namely Mark Kolker, who made the cataloguing of the Latin manuscripts his life work from the 1950s to the 2000s, and also John Scattergood and Neve Patwell's work on the Middle English manuscripts, and archivist Leanne Harrington's translation of the hard copies into the online catalogue. So I have to pay tribute to everybody on the project. The team all started their work just as the world went into the second lockdown at the start of 2021. And I don't need to outline how challenging that was. It was challenging for all of us. But access to the physical manuscripts was completely impossible at first. And Caroline even had to familiarise herself with really sophisticated camera equipment through online tutorials at first. But we front-loaded the research and hit the ground running when we could get back on site in late spring 2021, albeit 2 metres apart. Throw in Brexit difficulties and a major old library redevelopment project, which involves moving all of our collections from one library building to another. And it's been a very busy couple of years. Now, the physicality of the manuscripts have presented challenges too at times. Moving them from storage to conservation lab to photographic studio, we could give a whole other conference talk, I think, on the practicalities, workflows, spreadsheets. Maybe we will sometime. I'll have to think about that. Solutions have been found to the challenges of keeping manuscripts of various shapes and sizes, and with awkward clasps and book furniture, I've learned that word, book furniture, open whilst conservation work takes place. Delicate gold illuminations have required specific photographic techniques. And the largest manuscript, a 15th century breviary, manuscript 79, I was talking to someone about it earlier. It's about 1/2 metre high and it weighs 10 kilograms, so the same as a heavy car tyre. And we were moving that about quite regularly. The largest in terms of folios came in at nearly 1,000 images, I think. So it's been a fairly complicated project. Through all of it, Carnegie have been really supportive and flexible and always ready to listen, which has made a huge difference to the energy of the project. So we initially pitched to digitise 26 manuscripts as part of this project, but we've actually been able to digitise 60 manuscripts and fragments. That translates to 16,000 individual pages of medieval text, artwork, comments and corrections in various languages, scribbles, doodles, ownership marks, ink spills, cat paw prints, and candle smoke, although I think the candle smoke might have gone now since they've been through conservation. They're the raw materials of medieval research, preserving evidence of centuries of use and the personalities of their owners. This single project equates to 10% of the entire medieval collection in the library. To illustrate the impact of the team's work, I'd like to look at the example of the publication of the Matthew Paris Book of St Albans in the summer of 2022, a masterpiece of the 13th century scribe and artist and historian Matthew Paris. The manuscript contains 54 unique pieces of medieval art and had originally circulated amongst the women of the English court of the 13th century. Prior to the library's digitisation, the only way to study all of the images was to book an appointment in the reading room, and possibly that might involve a plane or a boat ticket to come here, or to consult the rare black and white 1924 facsimile edition by M.R. James, which is pictured here, and it wasn't exactly circulated amongst very many libraries. So it was either quite the quest or you changed your research. So now the entire manuscript is instantly and freely accessible online. It can be accessed in 2 easy steps. Google TCD Digital Collections, type in Matthew Paris, bingo, this is what you get. So the Book of St Albans is the last major Matthew Paris manuscript to be digitised and joins others housed in the British Library, Cambridge, Oxford and Manchester. Now, once a manuscript has been published online, it's important to get the word out there. The launch of this manuscript online included a video, online exhibition and a promotional programme in partnership with other libraries, researchers and community stakeholders. It included online articles by the British Library and Professor Clark and the University of Exeter, and coordinated social media posts with the British Library, Cambridge, St Albans Cathedral and Museum, and the British Embassy Ireland. All of this could only be done with the bedrock of the cataloguing and the wonderful images in place. And it resulted in some extensive media coverage, including the US, UK and Ireland. We've also forged an important collaboration with the community themselves in St Albans, especially the museum and the cathedral. We've contributed resources for their exhibitions and events and added the digitised manuscript to their digital reconstruction of the original Medieval Library of St Albans. We also gave an online lecture for them last summer, which we called Sharing the Medieval Book. Most importantly for us, more researchers accessed the online version of the manuscript in the first week than had accessed the real-life manuscript in the previous 10 years. And over 70% of those were brand new users to the library's digital collections platform. Part of the project's aim is to work on building those networks and collaborations. And as more manuscripts are digitised, more opportunities to do this are discovered. The digitisation of 3 manuscripts originally from Canterbury Cathedral sparked a number of teaching collaborations with the Centre for Medieval and Early Modern Studies at the University of Kent. This was fostered by our archivist Alison and Dr. David Rundle at Kent. And they use the manuscripts in online paleography and a transcribe-a-thon challenge for postgrad students and colleagues, mostly in the winter of 2022. Another collaboration came about, and I think Helen alluded to this earlier, when the work to research manuscript 514 identified one of the texts, it's a composite volume, and one of the texts of Pope Innocent III, I think it might be in the hand of Clement of Canterbury, so there's a Canterbury connection as well, is split between 2 collections. So the Trinity half of the text ends imperfectly on folio 204, it's this one on screen. The other half is now in Oxford in the Bodleian Library, Digby 77. So we're working with colleagues at the Bodleian there to digitally reconstruct the manuscript in the simplest way possible for the first time in 400 years. And we're aiming to use IIIF, which is used by both digital repositories. And very recently, we were contacted by the project run by the University of Toronto and EPHE in Paris, seeking to use part of manuscript 524, the Cartulary of Torre Abbey, for training of handwritten text recognition software to read the medieval Latin text through the open source program eScriptorium. We're moving into a third phase, during which we hope to work with Mark Faulkner again on our own handwritten text recognition initiatives at Trinity. This was something that he started to write about in his conversation piece. And so we're facilitating other projects as well as working on our own. So tune into his talk tomorrow for perhaps a sneak peek on how he's actually using these manuscripts to develop this. The digitisation has also had a real and immediate impact for our researchers. For our students at Trinity and elsewhere can be sent links to the digitised versions as part of their coursework, and bibliographies and online resources can be updated. The actual manuscripts are used regularly in the hands-on teaching for many medieval teaching strands, but extensively with the MPhil in medieval studies. More can be made available in the reading room than ever before, and they sit far more happily in their bookrests as they've now all been beautifully conserved. We're also a big part of the new Trinity Centre for the Book and fit neatly into the Sharing the Book strand. It's a very exciting time for our new centre, and we're already reaching more researchers through our connection with them. With Trinity Centre for the Book, we're regulars at European Research Night. During COVID, Mark developed Trinity's first online transcribe-a-thon event, which attracted interested attendees from all over Europe, some with knowledge of the medieval period and some with absolutely none. It was a bit of a gamble and it was quite hot making, but we all had a brilliant time and it worked really, really well. Post-COVID, we now run what is apparently one of the most popular stalls at EU Researchers' Night. Our conservation colleagues bring along the raw materials of manuscript production, complete with quills and inks to try, and we take the opportunity to test out all of our games. Our researchers are our most important community, so please let us know what you're working on. From a single letter or image that interests you to full-on brand new research that's about to be published, let us know, and I absolutely promise you we'll be as excited as you are. So don't think twice about getting in touch with us, and whatever way is easiest. Our project is still in progress, and there are more manuscripts to come. If you'd like to follow our progress or access the manuscripts themselves, you can do so via the website or follow the library and research collections on social media. There you go. Thank you. I'll hand over to Helen.
also hydration as well.
Thank you. Hello. So great to see so many of you here today. As Laura was saying at the beginning, this has been my main job now for a few months. I started in May. I'm a postdoc on this project. And yeah, I've just been working with Estelle and Caroline and Angelica on this amazing project. So feel so privileged to be part of this, and it's so great to see so many of you here today. So as Estelle was saying, we are digitizing as many medieval manuscripts as we can, and we're at about 60 manuscripts and fragments so far, so doing quite well. So much work goes into this, and Estelle had alluded to that, and a huge part of my job is getting to kind of see the work that Angelica and Caroline and Estelle all do around the manuscripts. And I think sometimes when we see these things online, we just assume, oh, great, and that's lovely. And we don't realize the kind of painstaking work that goes into, first of all, conserving them, getting them into the right condition so that they can then be handed over for imaging and put up online. So it's a great project to be part of, and my role in that is telling people about this, okay? So all of this amazing work is going on, but I think one of the really important things is getting this information out there and letting people know, the great manuscripts in this particular collection, and sharing that with as wide an audience as possible. So we're doing that in lots of different ways. One of them is through this symposium, and then we're involved in kind of other like outreach activities across the university as well. So we were at European Researchers Night, we were at the Arts and Humanities Festival, and just trying to kind of put it out there across the college community that these manuscripts are up and available, and trying to encourage as much research into them as possible. So yeah, we're also on social media as well, and yeah, you might have seen a few of these images and a few of these tweets over the past while. So if you would like to follow us at TCD Research Collections or at TCD Library, do come along and keep up to date with what's going on. As Laura mentioned, my research interest is varied. I'm interested in religion and culture and gender, kind of across the medieval period. So when I'm not organising or kind of helping to sort of put all of this together, I am dipping in and out of manuscripts, which is great. So this is definitely a highlight. So we've got lots of books of hours and psalters in the collection. And here's a screenshot here from digital collections. And I just think that one of the most interesting things about the kind of the annotations that you see in manuscripts is the insight it gives you into kind of the lived experience of medieval life. And some things can be, I think with the medieval period, some things can seem really far removed and a bit abstract and kind of hard to relate to. But in this particular psalter, as an example, there's recipes for a sore back, for, kind of a toothache and that kind of thing as well. So it just makes it very real. You're going to hear more from me tomorrow. I'm just kind of hopping on here to say who I am and what I do. But when I'm speaking tomorrow, I'm going to be speaking about this particular manuscript, which Estelle calls my happy manuscript. This is TCD MS 103, and it's a book of hours. So it has all these stunning illuminations or illustrations of the Virgin Mary. It's from the 15th century, provenance probably to the Netherlands. It is from the Vogel
collection. So great work being done there as well, and then digitized as part of our project because it's a manuscript. Very interesting book of ours, but what's interesting about it in particular is this memento mori on the final folio. So it's a paper emblem attached to a vellum leaf, and the inscription that runs around the outer rim is in this mirror, so may I learn how from sin I ought to turn. So kind of that moralizing aspect as well, which I think is really interesting. So I'll go into more details on that tomorrow. But just to say, you're very welcome. And yeah, we really look forward to kind of hearing about the work that you're doing. Because as Estelle was saying, you know, we've kind of all the work that's gone into conserving and digitizing these manuscripts, but really we'd like to hear from you, and that's the one thing I'm most excited about for this symposium, is to hear the research that you're doing into this, or maybe if you're not speaking on it, like what is your interest, and do let us know, because we'd love to hear more. So yeah, short and sweet today, but I'll be back on tomorrow. So thank you.
Thanks, Claire. So our next speaker this afternoon is Angelica Anchisi. Angelica is a book and paper conservator from Italy who's been in the Trinity team now since early 2021. She has worked across UK, Irish and European institutions, including the National Archives UK and Manchester University's John Rylands Library. Angelica first worked in Trinity as a Heritage Council intern in the Department of Preservation and Conservation back in 2018-19. And since rejoining as part of the long-standing team, Angelica has been working on 2 of the virtual Trinity Library projects, Unlocking the Fargo Collection and the Manuscripts for Medieval Studies project. So Angelica will speak today on conserving medieval manuscripts in the library's collection. Thank you,
Angelica. So yeah, as been said, I've been working on the Carnegie project for the past year and a half, a bit more. And so far I've worked on something like 23 manuscripts that have been selected to be digitized, to be imaged. So obviously before being imaged, my first job is to assess the condition of the manuscript and to check if the condition is good enough, then they go straight to imaging. If they're too damaged, then they cannot really be safely handled, then they come to conservation and I treat them before they can be digitized. As I said, I've been working on 23 manuscripts. Pretty much all of them were from the 15th or 16th century, with only a couple of them from the 13th or 14th century. Only 2 of these manuscripts were still in their medieval bindings, and all the other ones had been rebound in the early 18th century or 19th century. This because this is a typical 18th century binding. In between 1741 and 1744, Trinity decided to have some kind of rebinding campaign to just give some kind of more a tidier look to the long room. So just sent all the medieval manuscripts to be rebound, just so they could look all the same. So they sent them to John Exshaw, who was a printer and a bookbinder here in Dublin. And pretty much all the manuscripts that I treated were rebound in the 18th century by Exshaw, and then rebacked again in the early 19th century by George Mullen, who was another bookbinder. This because an 18th century, you can see here, this is a typical 18th century binding with full leather cover on millboards, no forest clouds, nothing to prevent the movement of the parchment, which is a really hygroscopic material, so it tends to move and to react really dramatically with every change of humidity and temperature in the environment. So it expands and shrinks and it moves a lot. So medieval bindings are the way they are for a reason. So with really heavy wooden boards, and forest cloths that prevent the parchment from moving with the humidity. Obviously, 18th century binding were thought for books on paper, so they don't work that well with parchment. So obviously, just a few decades after being made, also because the material used wasn't really great, so it tended to decay really quickly. So just a few decades after being done, they had to be rebacked again. So you can see here, that's the main problem that you can have with an 18th century binding. So boards detach and splitting or weakening of the sewing up on the spine. And you can see here the difference between this medieval binding. So this is Manuscript 101 with wooden boards and forest cloths that prevent the parchment from moving. And the one on top is an 18th century binding. So you can see the difference between how the parchment is really well behaved in this one and how it's really tends to move and kind of, how do you say, deformation and creases and whatever, because it's not kept in check by the clasps. So I'm going to give you an overview about what I do when one of these manuscripts come to me. So the very first thing is we kind of need to decide if the structure is safe enough and stable enough to be just consolidated, or if it's going to need a more extensive treatment, so a complete rebinding. So the very first thing that we do is to just get rid of all the material on the spine, which is usually really acidic and not really good for the manuscript itself. So we strip everything off, and it's also really useful because, as you can see everything that happened to the manuscript before. So you can see that one had been sewn before with different sewing stations. This second one is a composite manuscript, because you can see here and here sewing holes that just stop like in the middle of it, and you can actually see the difference in the color on the back folds of the parchment. And this third one, it was actually a really nice one, because it had really extensive water damage all along the back folds. And the person who worked on it before, instead of, obviously he was not a conservator, so instead of spending time repairing all the back folds, just chopped them off. And these are all stitches. So it stitched all the single folia together. So they were all single folia that had been stitched together and then sewn. So we strip them off, we check the sewing. If the sewing is stable enough and it's just going to need some kind of consolidation, then we leave it as it is. Otherwise, we sew the entire manuscript. So the one on top is a simple consolidation of the structure and of the sewing, with some new sewing supports just pasted on top of the old one and then stitched, going through the sections just to keep everything together, give a bit more support and a bit more strength to the structure. A new lining of usually Japanese paper and linen, and everything is kept a bit longer because it's what we use to put the boards back on the book box. So we kind of paste the linen, the lining, and the extension of the sewing supports on top of the boards so that we can put them together again. Otherwise, it's a complete resewing. This one was manuscript 48, I think. So again, you can see here, these are all the repairs on the back folds, because obviously if you resew it, you need the back folds to be strong enough to keep everything together. So the back folds are repaired and the book is resewn. And so in this second case, if it's a complete rebinding, after consolidating the structure, you repair the pages. So you see here, for example, this. So it was all crumpled. It was really heavily damaged. What we usually do is, this one is manuscript 78. So we actually had to remove the first two sections from the book block, gently humidify them, and then they dried under tension so that the creases are kind of able to relax. They're still there. You can see them. they're not as flat as they would have been if they had been treated years before, where the section would have been put on the press. But now we kind of keep them. The main purpose is to kind of relax them, so to make repairs and imaging easier, and just to be able to kind of see better the text. All kind of tapes and really recent repairs are taken off. So you can see that the one is manuscript 767, I think. So, but again, all kind of treatments done on the pages are really, really minimal. So just tears and losses are repaired using parchment. This is a new piece of parchment, or Japanese paper, or this shine that you can see here. This is caesium. So the membrane of the intestine that we use to repair the tears. But it's really, really minimal. It's not too interventive. It's not too much. And so when this is done, when all the repairs are done and the structure is safe, if we went for a complete rebinding, we make some new boards. Again, this is manuscript 48. And you can see the boards have been made and shaped in the same way that would have, that in the same way as wooden boards. So they're shaped and they're cushioned. And channels are made for the sewing supports to be laced in, just to connect, to anchor the boards to the book block. So this is what we usually do, the most typical kind of treatment. So this is a really simple reback. In this case, the sewing and the structure were completely fine. It was a recess sewing. So what I did was just a really simple consolidation of the spine. I made some new fake sewing supports just to kind of replicate what it used to look like. And then a new piece of leather had been dyed just to match the color of the boards, and pasted on all the spine and goes underneath the leather on the boards just to keep everything together. This is something of an in-between. This is one of the antiphonals. So as you can see, it was split in two. But we kind of decided to go for an in-between. So I didn't re-sew the entire manuscript, but I just consolidating the sewing. I put everything back together. I left the sewing supports longer, and I made some new boards. So the structure is the same, but the boards are new, and I've covered it. This is goat skin and bookbinding block cloth. So something of an in-between. So the structure is the same, but the binding is new. And this is my favorite. This is a complete rebinding. So in this case, as you can see again, both boards were off. The sewing was broken. So I had to re-sew the entire manuscript. New boards were made, shaped, channeled, the anchor to the book, and completely covered with full leather goat skin. This is the most interventive kind of treatment. It's so far out of the 23 manuscripts that I've done, only 3 of them needed this kind of treatment. For everything else, I've just done a really simple reback. So it's more interventive, but obviously the result is stronger. It's gonna last longer. It's not just working around the damage, but just making everything new again. So it's much more satisfying. So that's probably my favorite. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Angelica. That was really interesting. So our next speaker is Caroline Harding, who is a senior digital photographer in the Library of Trinity College Dublin. Caroline joined us in 2021 to commence working on the manuscripts included in this project, and she is responsible for the 16,000 pages of images photographed. As well as holding a bachelor's degree in scientific photography from RMIT University in Melbourne, she also holds an MSc in environmental studies and sustainability science from Lund University. Caroline has a fascinating background in scientific and medical photography, as well as experience in photography for museum collections. So Caroline is going to speak today about the perks of digitising medieval manuscripts, her reflections on strategy, challenges and techniques. Let's come up, Caroline.
Hello, everybody. I'm Caroline, and I'm the Senior Digital Photographer for the Manuscripts for Medieval Studies project. So in this talk, I'm going to just basically give a general reflection on the digitization process of the project and go over some important highlights of the process and talk about some of the particular photographic lighting techniques used throughout the project, such as lighting for gold and raking lighting. So, which has been mentioned a couple of times before, so a total of 60 medieval manuscripts and fragments were selected for the project, and roughly 16,000 images have been put online since the project started in March 2021, which is when I started. So the main highlights from the selected manuscripts were the Life of St. Albans, which I'm going to talk about the most. And one other highlight was the Winchcombe Psalter manuscript, which is photographed during phase 2. On top of that, there was a range of large Irish antiphonies. There was, well, as we've mentioned, there's a very large variety of different medieval manuscripts, which included a large 14th century Bible with historical water damage, which also had roughly 70 gold-plated illustrations, which I will mention briefly as well. And also within this section were a range of books of hours, including a palm-sized book of hours, which we are very quite fond of. So I had the pleasure of photographing a very large variety of medieval manuscripts, as you can see. So our main aim was to create high-resolution digital surrogates of each manuscript selected for digitization and ensure each image was captured to the highest standard we could produce with our resources. So this is our general aim within the digital collections department, which I am a part of. And the purpose of the images is for them to be accessible to everyone with internet access and be usable for multiple purposes such as academic and conservation research, as well as usable for publication and commercial use and printing purposes. So each image also needs to be future-proofed. So each digitized manuscript will not need to be digitized again, and future-proofed so each digital file will still be usable and accessible many years to come. So within the digital collections department, we considered the digitization process to be relatable to kind of pipeline where each item is passed through a series of steps and expertise. So the pipeline for digitizing manuscripts starts at the manuscript selection phase with Estelle and Claren and Alison when she was still here. And then the selected manuscript is assessed by the project's conservator and treatment is applied if needed. After conservation, it's then passed on to us onto me to the digital collection studios for digitization. Then the digital part of the pipeline begins, which involves digital imaging, post-processing, and then the images are passed on to our other photographer for quality assurance or for auditing. Then they're passed on to our cataloger who puts them onto our online repository. And then they're passed on back to another photographer so they can go into digital archiving. So it has a long process. It's a multi-step process with multiple people involved with varying So several different types of specialized equipment were used during the digitization project, the digitization process. One of the specific heroes out of all of the equipment used was the conservation motorized book cradle, which you can see in this picture. The motorized conservation book cradle was used to position and stabilize each manuscript throughout each shoot and provide better safety to the object opposed to using a conventional copy stand. The motorized cradle has multiple functions which allow the cradle to be easily adjustable to stabilize any size manuscript up to 60 centimeters in length. And the cradle boards are easily adjustable to support the spines of the manuscript, which are often fragile and require a fair amount of stability throughout the digitization process. So the image plane and the camera plane are situated at a 45-degree angle on the cradle, making it easier to capture text, which can be slightly hidden within tight binding and can be sometimes difficult to photograph. The other fundamental hero amongst our equipment is the 150 megapixel medium format digital back camera, which is used to capture the high resolution images of each manuscript, along with Capture One Pro image capture software. Two other very important tools which I used throughout the imaging process were a calibrate color chart and a magnetic color bar used for color consistency. So the foundational standard lighting setup used for most of the manuscripts consisted of 2 flash heads equipped with a softbox connected to a floor pack, and each flash head was positioned on either side of the motorized conservation cradle, roughly 1 meter away from the object, and raised roughly 2 feet above the object and angled at a 45-degree angle towards the object being photographed. This is considered to be a very standard lighting setup for a two-dimensional cultural heritage imaging. And the setup is designed to make it easier to control the overall image output, including the color reproduction and consistency. So color management and accuracy and consistency is one of the most important aspects of the digitization process. Having a color management system is very important to incorporate for all of our work produced within the digital collection studios. And a color management system is needed to increase the usability of the images, as the images are often used, are fundamentally used for academic research, and they can also be used for commercial use and for publications. And the way that we digitize the images, they can also be used as a comparative tool to track degradation of an object. So the first step of the color management system involved color calibrating out the screen used for image capture and creating a color profile, which is done by using color calibration software with a built-in screen calibrator. At the beginning of each shoot, the white balance and correct exposure needed to be set. So considering all forms of lighting create a color cast of some kind, therefore white balance needs to be corrected to ensure all whites render as true white. And by setting this manually, we have full control over the white balance, and then control over color management. So the white balance is just the white balance is corrected by capturing an image of the calibrate color chart, which is up on the screen there. So this chart has 140 different color swatches, and the white balance is corrected by just referring to the middle gray. And then the exposure is determined by capturing multiple images and tweaking the flash output until the exposure values matches the value which is internationally recognized as an ideal exposure. Color consistency and exposure accuracy are maintained within each image by capturing what is known as the golden thread color bar in each image. And the color bar can be used as a guide for color accuracy if the image is ever to be printed for publication. So often different lighting and structural techniques are needed for unique manuscripts, such as manuscripts filled with illustration or text, which include gold gilding and coarse gold, and bronze highlights. Other adjustments sometimes have to be made to show hidden text, which is situated very tightly within binding, and which can be almost impossible to capture with the standard imaging setup. So the Matthew Paris Life of St. Albans manuscript contains several illustrations which had hidden texturing within them, which could only be captured using raking light, which I'll also talk about later. Each of these attributes within the manuscripts often required a bit of experimentation and research with different ways of lighting and structuring techniques. So gold gilding and leafing was a very common feature to appear in illustrations and text within a number of the selected manuscripts. Each required experimentation to capture the gold correctly. And gold is not illuminated correctly during image capture. The gold can appear as brown and have unwanted reflections, making it difficult to see how the gold is actually meant to appear, which can make it difficult for the viewer to even determine if it is actually gold that they're looking at. One example of a gold lighting technique I used was to add 2 additional flash heads behind the cradle or the subject, and angle them at the same angle as the subject plane, so at a 45-degree angle, and set them very low. So this technique was used specifically for MS-35, which is a large medieval Bible which has historical water damage, as well as over 70 folios containing highly reflective gold. So the historical water damage also caused the pages to crinkle, causing the gold to reflect in all kinds of directions under uncontrolled lighting. The 4-light technique appeared to work best for this type of manuscript, as the extra lights gave a diffused, soft kick to bring out the gold, whilst not creating more reflections. So another gold lighting technique, which was used most often, is known as the bounce light technique. So this technique involves placing a large reflector on top of the camera and above the 2 light sources. And the large reflector needs to be at the same angle as the image plane, so at a 45-degree angle, to ensure even illumination. An additional light is then placed in front of the cradle and angled upwards towards the reflector and set very low. And this is to bounce light back onto the manuscript and bring out the gold highlights to give them a bit of a kick. I found this technique to be most effective when photographing coarse gold rather than highly reflective gold. I also used this gold lighting technique for the Matthew Paris manuscript, which had a number of illustrations containing coarse gold, which wasn't so reflective, however, doesn't render properly under standard lighting. This manuscript also contained illustrations with pastel colors, which can become very easily washed out if there are too many light sources, such as the 4-light technique. A good example of this setup is the illustration of the golden waterfall, just up there, within the Matthew Paris manuscript, which had not been captured to show the gold properly before. The image on the right shows the bounce lighting setup for the, which is set up for the copy stand, and the copy stand was used to digitize the unbound manuscripts and fragments. So, talking about the Matthew Paris manuscript again, so it was one of my favorite manuscripts to work on. And one of the highlights for me when digitizing this manuscript was getting to experiment with breaking light to reveal the hidden modeling and texturing within some of the illustrations within the manuscript. So as you may know, the Life of St. Albans manuscript has a number of illustrations which were done by using a unique illustration technique which can only be revealed under certain lighting, such as raking light. So this hidden texturing can be seen within the bricks and the back end of the horses, and in the clothing seen in the illustrations. So the texturing appears as interesting smoothness amongst very coarse texturing that make up the rest of the illustrations. And what was also very exciting about getting to work on this manuscript was the fact that it had not been digitized before, so no image records of these hidden details existed. The raking light images were captured at the end of the initial digitization of the manuscript. And as the Matthew Paris manuscript was a high security manuscript, I only had a few hours towards the end of the shoot to capture the raking light images, but we still managed to get it done. So the raking light technique basically involves using a single light source and positioning it at a raking angle to the subject. And the best way to practice this technique is to take multiple images of the one subject with the raking light source positioned at different angles around the subject. So this allows you to compare the images and see which images show the most detail, which may otherwise be invisible to the unaided eye. So for the Matthew Paris manuscript, I took several images of one folio with the light positioned at different raking angles, such as the top of the page, to the side, at the bottom, and slightly higher and slightly lower, and compared these images. And in these examples, I deemed the image with the light source positioned at the top of the page at a raking angle at the subject plane to show the most detail within the hidden text string. Ideally, each of these lighting positions would have been taken for each illustration if we had the time. However, with high security and COVID, that was a little bit tight for time. But I still managed to get a raking light image of all of the folios containing this hidden detailing. And so I just have a couple of examples. So what I was talking about, you can kind of see it in this stuff here up on the crown and here where it's sort of smooth. So I've been told that this may possibly be actually where the paint has been faded or has worn out, but it doesn't sound like that's officially known. But yeah, so I've just got one more example. And yep, so that's it.